You're crawling around.
Yeah, the
just
hospital
like,
thing is a real.
oh my goodness! Like I'm gonna die one day.
So I love open world games, but there was one open world game that came out fairly recently that we always joke about it in the office that you love, that it just never really clicked for me, and that's The Witcher 3. I talked about this on a previous episode. I'm sorry, Riley.
How often are you just talking about hating The Witcher 3? It's like every episode.
You know what's funny though?
Is this a Witcher 3 hate cast?
This is basically I'm gonna talk shit about The Witcher 3 for like 3 hours. For whatever reason, I got around the 5-hour mark and nothing was really clicking for me. I feel like the setting, I'm not really into that mythology or that world. But I keep hearing it's amazing. It did all these things and it's influenced games that I actually love that came out after it. But I think I made the same mistake with this game that I did with Horizon Zero Dawn, where I played it after playing an open world game that I cherish and adore so much, which is Breath of the Wild. In Horizon Zero Dawn's case, that's a game where I felt so guilty about not liking when I first tried it. I had to put it on ice for a bit and then I came back to it way later and I loved it.
That you don't like The Witcher 3. I am known for loving The Witcher 3. And I didn't like it at first either, actually, because I don't like fantasy. And I feel like it takes about 10 hours to get good, which I know is like a lot of hours. The setting grew on me, but I definitely had to slog through. And I actually read a blog about this, about one weekend I told myself I could only play The Witcher 3, because I was told it was amazing. So I was like, no other games, nothing but The Witcher 3. And I sat there and I played it, and by the end of the weekend I was like, oh, this is the greatest game of all time. I think your point about when you play a game you really like, sometimes anything you play after that is just not going to be as good. The game I feel bad about not liking is Metal Gear. I'm a really big, that's why we have these big tables.
Yeah, it's really heavy, I can't really flip it.
I'm a super big stealth gamer, and everyone's like, oh, Metal Gear, you've obviously played Metal Gear. I wrote many years before I worked here, an article about stealth games that came out right when Metal Gear 5 came out. And everybody was like, how did you not mention Metal Gear 5? And I'm like, oh,
I didn't really play that one.
And I tried to play it recently, and because everyone says Metal Gear 5 is an amazing stealth game, and I got to I couldn't even get through the intro. It's so long and tedious and clumsy and confusing, and every time anyone talks about the Metal Gear series, it's always weird names and strange things happen. Yeah, and I'm just like, it's not really my jam. But they're supposed to be such good stealth games that I know that I like. I'm ashamed to call myself a stealth gamer and not have played a Metal Gear. And Heather wrote a book about Metal Gear, so I have no excuse.
Metal Gear is definitely a very particular case where, like you said, it's a great game. The gameplay itself is actually really, really good, but sometimes the story, even for me, I love the Metal Gear series. I mean, when I first played it as a kid, or I watched my older brother play it as a kid, I remember thinking, wow, this is the future. The moment Snake is running through the intro level and the credits are on screen, I remember thinking oh my God, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and here I am. But I agree, the story, even as a kid, it was easy to follow that story, but then the ones that came after it and how they just brought in more lore and more world building stuff, it really becomes sort of a chore to get through all of it, and it's just basically a really convoluted anime. And I feel you really have to be cool with it going places that you're kind of just scratching your head and you're like, why is she wearing that? She really has to wear that, really? So I can understand how it can put some people off.
One of my favorite stealth games is Dishonored, and the first time I played it, I didn't like it at all. I got all the way to the very end, and I was just this has happened. And then, actually I watched a YouTube series from PC Gamer about where they made all the kills look like accidents, and for some reason that video series made me realize that Dishonored, the story is not very good, but the things you can do in its world are really great. And so then suddenly these 5 YouTube videos expanded my mind, and I started the game again and played 80 hours of it or something at this point. But like you're saying before, there's so many games, and who has time to, you're not going to play Horizon Zero Dawn again to try to like it.
Well, actually, I did, and it actually worked out. So but it took me 8 months to finally get around to it. I feel in that same vein, I think you should try to give Metal Gear 5 another crack because it's like, it's so cool.
Getting is so long. And you're crawling around.
Yeah, the
Just
hospital thing is a real.
Oh my goodness! Like I'm gonna die one day.
Yeah. That's how I felt the first 5 hours of The Witcher 3 though. So.
Well, see, but you're gonna die one day without having played The Witcher 3, which is basically like not living. So, that way.
You know what? So here's the thing. I'll challenge you to revisit Metal Gear 5, and I will take another stab at The Witcher 3 in particular, just so we could. And like I think it's like you mentioned before. I think sometimes it's a matter of like just putting your head down and just sort of like chugging through it, like shouldering through all the like. I mean, Persona 5 was like that for me, where people were like, just get through the first 10 hours. And like, it's like a 10-hour tutorial. And you're like, how? I have a full-time job. I can't be doing this. So I will try The Witcher 3 again if you play Metal Gear 5, if you give it another crack.
Okay, maybe after E3.
Maybe after E3.
Because I'm like, oh, there's time for this.
Yeah, word.
Yeah, I think there's also a big difference between a game not being for you and saying a game is bad. And I think in that way, like when people are, mad at you on Twitter, like you're not like Horizon Zero Dawn is a terrible game, which it's easy to do. I think when you don't like something, it's easy to be like, it's bad. Right. And I think that like for me with Metal Gear, enough people have said things about it that I trust that I'm like, okay, it's me. Like I'm the problem. Like it's good.
It's not you, it's me.
I feel that way a bit about Breath of the Wild. Well, because I got a Switch finally, and it's good, but I had this moment where I was like, God, this is like so Zelda-y. And I was like, A, yes, obviously, you moron, and B, like, there's something I think having come so late to that series where it's like, I'm just like a step behind it. It's another one that I need to like sit down and like work. I don't not like it, but I'm not like, this has changed my life, the way that like, or Steven was like, oh, you're gonna love it, oh my gosh, because you love The Witcher, and I'm like, oh, that's all right.
I was just about to say the same thing. I'm like, I think you'd like it if you like The Witcher.
Well, you like it and you don't like The Witcher, so.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe, you know what, maybe it's me. It's mostly just not saying that something is bad, because like, that's just like a lazy way of sort of critiquing something where you say, oh, Fortnite's bad. PUBG sucks. It's like, they're great games.
Outtakes of this that are going to be taken out of context and get us murdered.
PUBG sucks, and then we're going to use that clip Kotaku.com. But yeah, a lot of times it just amounts to it's just not for you. It's not for me. And sometimes that guilt comes along with it, and you feel guilty about it, but you have to sort of carry it and sort of find yourselves in situations where you're constantly defending yourself, but sometimes it's just not for you, and you can't help that.
I mean, that was one good thing about this job is that because you need to check out so many different games, sometimes I'll try something. Like Overwatch, I probably never would have played if I didn't work here. It's like online multiplayer shooter, no, under no circumstances. But like, I think I just started working at Kotaku when it came out, and everybody was excited about it, and everybody was talking about it, and I was like, well, I'd better check it out too. I want to be a good, colleague, and I love it. And then like, I never would have loved this. So that is like even if you don't have time to give something the chance that you'd like to, like, you do get to try things out.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have people around you that you can sort of like you said before, vicariously enjoy it through them. Yeah. It's nice to have that. Like, oh, I don't like Smash, but it's nice to hear Cecilia talk about Smash or something.
Kirk Hamilton said the following thing about Dark Souls.
Right.
So that's my opinion.